Okay, I think we've maxed out for now. That's a lot of people today. So let's get started. For those of you that don't know, I'm Grant Wilson, Executive Chair of Tivan Limited. Want to welcome you to, I think it's our third investor briefing of the year, in sync with our commitment to timely and transparent communications with shareholders and stakeholders at Tivan. It's remarkable to think that our last presentation, I think, was the 22nd of March, so not even 3 months ago, and the progress the company's made in those 3 months across different value streams as well, whether we're talking about Sandover or Tivan Plus, or of course the Speewah Fluorite project. The progress the company's made in 3 months is remarkable, and delighted to be presenting today following our major announcement last Friday, a strategic alliance with Sumitomo Corporation. So just some housekeeping at the top. I think this will run for closer to an hour today. There's a lot of material to get through, 45 minutes to certainly not longer than an hour. There will be a replay. The basic structure will be sort of 5 minutes on Sandover, 5 minutes on vanadium and Tivan Plus, half an hour or so on fluorite. And we'll then get into the Q&A. We've received a lot of questions this week. We've tried to capture the key themes in the questions that we selected, and I'll aim to address those for 15 minutes or so. So thanks very much for showing up. We're delighted with the surge of enthusiasm and interest in our story. We're super excited at the moment. I said last time round that mid-year would be exciting. It's just starting. And obviously last Friday's announcement catalyzed a lot of interest in the company and the story. So I'm just going to get into the slides now. All right, off we go. So for those new to the story, what we've really achieved, I think, let's say over the last 6 months, we went to the AGM after a year of transformation from TNG to Tivan, focused largely on the acquisition of Speewah and different development pathways for the vanadium titanium resource, the world-class resource at Speewah. So 6 months ago, we were talking about that as our lead project and sole focus. And within 6 months, we've transformed, I think, the company into this diversified critical minerals proposition. There are effectively 3 projects underway, all cutting edge, all, I think, credible, ultimately commercially. And that's a pretty unique value proposition, I think, for any junior mining company, junior critical minerals company. And it's a product of a huge amount of work, I think, over the past 18 months. And so the Lassonde curve, the classic presentation you'll see on our website, we presented this back in January as we started this transition to manage expectations and introduce this next phase of Tivan. And I'll speak just now about Sandover and then the vanadium and the Tivan Plus technology, because both of these areas have had really exciting developments in the last 2 months since I last spoke. And again, that was March 22. So as we go through today, just think about the hyper productivity of the company and the team working across these 3 different drivers of value for shareholders. So at Sandover, I think it was early in April, we upgraded the project to a strategic priority. We'd seen enough from Earth AI to know that they were more than proven themselves in the field in their technology. I'm at their office again today. I'd flown in from Alice just a couple of hours ago, in fact, so I've been out in Central Australia pretty much all week. And the progress they've made on country and obviously with the various finds has been exceptional. We are really committed to the Sandover project now, returning full circle from where this company started in many ways. I think it was April when, in addition to the high-grade lead that we found in Aileron, we found high-grade silver just south, which is a really exciting development. I've been out in Alice this week principally to finalise agreements with Central Land Council and traditional owners. I want to emphasise here that Central Australia is quite different than the Kimberley, and it's a very fragile part of the country. I've got deep roots there. For those that don't know, I grew up in Alice. It feels like a long time ago now. It's changed and it hasn't changed. And even this week, We knew as we were going out on country with CLC that it would be a very sensitive set of meetings. We were focused this week on Dnieper. And for those that are following the Sandover project closely, late last year, we found prospectivity for copper and lithium way to the east at Sandover. And because that was the first area that Earth AI defined, that was naturally the first area where we expected to commence drilling. And this week, I won't get into the details too much, but one of the communities we visited has had some trauma, if I can put it in those terms, and that has delayed the kickstart of the drilling campaign. We expected to be able to commence that in July at Dnieper, and I think it'll take a few more months. And of course, we have to be very, very mindful of, the sensitivities in that part of the country and what we're trying to achieve ultimately in Alice Springs, mindful of short-term goals and targets versus what I want to emphasize here today, which is the importance of building long-term relationships in Central Australia across the traditional owner network and, of course, the pivotal role that the Central Land Council plays. Now, Dnieper is different than Aileron, where we've found the lead and the silver, and we're very much on track there. But obviously, we only found those incredible surface mineralizations a couple of months ago. So that's second. And in fact, it might be first now after developments this week. I think it's August and we'll see how we go. But I'm much less focused on trying to hit accelerated targets than making sure that we have those foundational relationships in place, particularly at Aileron, because we're so confident there that we've found something spectacular. And we're thinking about the next phase already in terms of mining agreements and making sure we have the foundations there to push on, given its location and the incredible results that we've found so far. Now, Earth AI has been out at Aileron quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, doing more field work, getting ready. And I can share as well that CSIRO's discovery team is involved now. They've done a lot of long-run research, geophysics and things like that around the area. They're super excited as well. So they'll form part of our sort of brains trust around Aileron especially. So we're very much on track in Central Australia. It is a lot of work, and we've got to be sure that we're operating with due cultural sensitivity, and frankly also be mindful of the heritage of this company. Before I took over as exec chair, this company was TNG, and TNG left a sorry legacy in Central Australia at Mount Peak, and that burden is still there to this day. So a very productive week out in Alice. We're on track. We've got support of the NT government as well. We're looking forward to commencing the drilling. I won't give firm dates. It's close, and we have a fantastic ground game, and I think we have an incredible opportunity at Aileron. So to Speewah, as everyone knows, vanadium was really the reason we acquired Speewah, to pivot the company from Mount Peak and frankly, keep the lights on. And a year on, or a little bit more than a year on, I'm as excited as ever about Speewah. It is in terms of mineral resources, the gift that keeps giving. Even in this past 2 months, as we've moved away from the PFS that we were working on with Hatch on the vanadium, which was a salt roast technology pathway. We've continued on our work towards proving up Speewah's vanadium for Sumitomo Electric Industries on vanadium redox flow batteries, which is a really important potential value opportunity and really where we want the company to head over the long term. That is the long-term mission, long duration energy storage on the vanadium. That was really the core thesis most of last year. But at the same time, throughout last year, we were trying to fix Tivan. And again, I won't get into the treacherous history of the Tivan technology, but for those long-standing TNG shareholders, now proudly Tivan shareholders, the flow sheet that I found when I walked in the door was broken. In my view, it had fatal flaws. It was clearly not commercially viable. And that was the core reason why I turned to CSIRO. I'd found out that they were working on something similar, and hence that relationship commenced. And what a relationship it's been. It's really flourished. It's considered a best-in-class collaboration, not just by us, but by CSIRO and you'll see more evidence of that soon. And we'd been working on a long-run test work program with them on the Tivan Plus technology, which integrates some of the things they've been working on for a long time. I think we've got through about 3 years of test work in 1 year with CSIRO, given the nature of that collaboration. And we released to the market the results, the first run results of the Tivan Plus technology test work program recently, and it shows incredible recovery grades in vanadium, and interestingly, very, very high recovery grades in magnetite, which could make the magnetite at Speewah amenable to green steel and DRI, and even LFP batteries. So it's taking another sort of step in the evolution, and the appropriate thing for us to do as a team and with CSIRO is, once we get through the PFS on the fluorite, is to take stock and to look at where we were on the salt roast, to look at where we are now on Tivan Plus, which is new information to us even. We didn't know that it was going to come through with these incredible results. And let me emphasize, based on Speewah ore, like actually using Speewah ore. So we're proving up our resource in the process here. So we want to put, again, the best and brightest together in the month of August, September. We will make a decision at that point. It's no longer the case that we can sustain effectively 2 technology paths. We want to isolate one. There is pros and cons. There are clear commercial advantages, I think, and probably a need for a step change in the VTM space. The resources around Australia, people will know that I don't believe that any of them will be able to get to market as a pure play vanadium. So the opportunity we have for a step change in technology with CSIRO's deep engagement is there. And I think without preordaining that decision, we'll sit down, devote real serious resources to it. There are other collaboration partners potentially involved in Tivan Plus as well, and we'll make that call in about August, I expect. So on those 2 projects, which are at the start of the Lassonde curve, exploration for Sandover, and let's call it vanadium Tivan Plus at Speewah, this incredible resource that we have, tremendous progress in the last couple of months. So let me turn to the main game and why a lot of people are here today. The Speewah Fluorite project, announced 4.5 months ago, I think, and raised a lot of eyebrows at the time. I know it caused confusion and consternation at the time. We knew what we were doing. And I think over this very short period of time, the light bulbs have gone on. I still think there's a journey ahead. I said right at the top that we'd have to run almost an education campaign on fluorite. And that is an ongoing initiative, I would say, in terms of retail investors, but institutional investors, Australia in general. There's never been a fluorite project in Australia. The market's very accustomed to, obviously, lithium and rare earths in the critical mineral space. And now this has come along. And for those that are really close to the company, I do think you have almost an information asymmetry now, because you're more read in on what we're doing. And I think the fundamentals of the project and the fundamentals of the story are so positive that you almost have a real opportunity here in terms of the value proposition that's being created. So the story broadly, for those that are new to it, is that the fluorspar market in general is going through a massive transformation at the moment, and it's principally all to do with China and the use cases. There are lots of traditional use cases for fluorspar, ranging from glass to ceramics and optics and various forms of acids. But the 2 critical use cases, the 2 critical ones, are EV batteries and semiconductors. And we know, just looking at this chart that my former colleagues in New York have prepared, that China is depleting its reserves. We know this from the previous slides that we presented with Benchmark Minerals, but we can see this in the trade balance. When you pull apart bilateral trade statistics very carefully, you can see China's own journey on fluorspar. They started 20 years ago as being the world's largest exporter of fluorspar, and just in the past year, they've turned to the world's biggest importer. And that's a huge shift. It's quite hard to change a trade balance. And my colleagues at Ex-Ante have some of the best trade statisticians in the world. And they were even surprised when they saw this outcome. So we believe this is an ongoing trend. We can see it in terms of the demand function and the supply function and the resources in China. And it's a very important concept to understand, because I think for any of these critical mineral projects in Australia, ultimately there has to be that demand function. And when China's consuming at the rate that they are, and there's high criticality, if you think about those two industries I just mentioned, you couldn't ask for two more critical industries than semiconductors and EV batteries, and fluorspar is intrinsic to both of them. So that's sort of the starting point. And this is a new slide for shareholders. Price is absolutely key for all these projects. And this is really the essence of the struggle for the critical minerals sector in Australia. Over the past 5 years, I've said this on Twitter recently, despite all of the noise around critical minerals, and despite that incredible bubble that happened from, say, 2021, 2022, only one project has been successfully delivered in Australia, Mount Holland in lithium. Now, there's been a couple of projects that have started and shut down. I don't regard those as successful. And there's also been long-standing projects that have shut down in nickel and manganese. So the actual scoreboard for critical minerals in Australia is about -4 mines over the past 5 years. And it's largely to do with, poor project fundamentals, the high cost curve for Australia. Sometimes it's infrastructure. I think there's a lot of management issues personally, but it's also to do with price. The price of these commodities is incredibly volatile, most of them. It's highly opaque, and it's very, very difficult for project financiers to get comfortable as a consequence. Now, let's contrast that to fluorspar. Fluorspar has been around for ages. It has all those fundamental industrial use cases. And because of that, it is possible to draw long-term time series, such as the one I'm showing here. And you'll see, particularly if you look at the China pricing here, the FOB pricing, it's basically doubled in 5 years, but on a steady trend. You're not seeing this epic volatility as you did in lithium, goes up 5 times, crashes. That's very, very hard for all parties concerned, even project proponents. What you want to see is what you've got here, a steady uptrend consistent with supply-demand dynamics, which are also visible, and an annualized volatility of 15%. Lithium's more like 60 to 100, depending on the time period that you want to use. And so when you're a project financier, you're looking at this and you're seeing a high integrity price source provided here by Fast Markets, ISCO compliant, fully audited. They do call outs to buyers, sellers, intermediaries in China on a weekly basis. So it's a time series you can really put some stock in. And then it's long-term, and it's also across geographical sectors. We're showing here Europe as well. The Mexican fluorspar tends to trade at a significant discount because it's got high arsenic content. And we also know metspar, which is interestingly a lower grade product, but it's trading at a very, very high price now as well. And so the basic proposition here is that you can see this transformative shift in supply-demand dynamics in fluorspar, and we can see it coming through in the price. All of the relevant forecasters that we're talking to have the price going higher yet. I personally don't want to see it spike, but we know that there's a structural supply deficit, particularly of the low arsenic fluorspar, because the low arsenic fluorspar is required in semiconductors and EV batteries, the real growth sectors. And so it's an important chart for shareholders to start to get their heads around. It will be part of our upcoming PFS, of course. And what it means really for Tivan, and I have to be careful here not to get ahead of the PFS, but we believe we can present a commercially viable project to market based on current commodity prices. And when I look through the critical minerals prospectus, I see 50 projects, and I don't see really any that can do that. And also our price is not volatile. It's got that high integrity, which project financiers like to see. And so we are in a really unique position with this project. I have to keep doing this education campaign for people that have heard it once before. I'll try to keep it fresh and keep evolving like I am here. But part of my role is to bring Australia up that knowledge curve. And the key points I'll keep re-emphasizing is that China's got this reserve depletion dynamic, particularly for low arsenic fluorspar. That's why they're having to import. That's why they've slashed import tariffs to 0. And they've done that specifically for low arsenic fluorite, which is what Speewah has. And so even within this market, we're in a really unique position to deliver to high criticality industries, high criticality. Again, semiconductors. Think about semiconductors. Think about artificial intelligence and the demand pull from that sector. EV batteries have been all the rage. Now they're not so much right now. So there's perhaps some cyclicality. There's still some disappointment running through the lithium sector. But for fluorspar, because it's got all these use cases and 2 highly critical ones, both of which have real upside, and there's a genuine shortage of resource, I think this uptrend will be sustained, and it underwrites our project. And because it's low volatility in price, it gives confidence to the people that will be involved on the project finance side. Okay, so back to us. This is a chart that everyone wanted. I did look at Hot Copper this afternoon for the first time in a while. And yes, I understand people want ongoing guidance on schedule. Typically, and we'll keep doing this, I don't want to push schedules out with this granular detail. This is very precise, out multiple years, because I want to be focused on where we're really high confidence on delivering on those timeframes. This provides a lot of detail, I think much more detail than peers, shall I say. You can see the multiple work streams. You can see the build up through resource expansion, test work. The various milestones are highlighted with the gold dots. That's what we regard as major milestones. I've included here as well some of the very important agreements I'm working on with traditional owners across the Kimberley and with the Kimberley Land Council. These are major initiatives and very important for project delivery. And we've listed here for the first time, the expected dates for the feasibility study and the definitive feasibility study. I think we've previously said that we wouldn't need to go to front-end engineering and design, and that remains the case. So in many ways, it's that DFS provisionally October of next year, which marks the end of the project delivery, the project design and all of the feasibility studies. So the path is a scoping study way back in 2018, which we've been working on, furiously now for about 4 months to pull it into shape for the pre-feasibility study, just about a month away now. And then there's a feasibility study, which will include the resource expansion and extension, the first stage of the resource extension, based on the drilling that we'll be conducting from Q3, and then definitive feasibility, which is October. And as we go through those stage gates, the ranges on costs will continue to compress. So if it's plus 30, minus 20, those ranges will tighten and tighten and tighten as the design basis continues to firm up and as procurement starts to kick in as well. So this is, shall I say, fast. We are talking here still about first production target, Jan 2027. That would be 3 years after we announced the project. The average mine project takes 15 years around the world, admittedly from discovery, and this was discovered a long time ago. But to pick a project up out of its sort of orphan phase in terms of the Lassonde framework and deliver it in 3 years is ambitious, unprecedented. Bearing in mind, one critical minerals project has been delivered in Australia in 5 years. It would be an incredible achievement. And yet here we are, very much on track. If you could see our Gantt chart, it's a spectacular piece of intellectual property, 600 tasks. And we put that together over the recent months, and we're hitting all of them at the moment. Now, I'm not going to die in a ditch if it's December 2026 was the last update, January 2027 now. That's not a delay. That's because we wanted to integrate the hydro study, and that took a little bit of time to pull together with Horizon. The most important thing in all these questions is that it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see people talking about schedules and looking for these sorts of data points, because they're starting to move from could Tivan possibly deliver a project as the dominant question to when will they? And that's a great shift in psychology, and we want to obviously continue that, and we're taking really, really significant steps towards that. So this is an important sort of baseline set of data. We'll keep, publishing these sorts of grids to keep market expectations in line with what we're working on. And at this stage, I can say that, we're absolutely on track. And so that's the schedule. In terms of resource expansion, I won't spend too much time on this chart. For those that really want to dig into the resource, we've published a JORC in April. We've published an exploration target in May, as we said we would. It's a ton of work that we're getting through. And it's not just Tivan, SRK has put in a huge shift to get through those important documents and to fix up this data room that we inherited, multiple drill programs coming back over decades, really. So the understanding of the resource has massively progressed over this period of time. And we've been working now for nearly 2 months to come up with the most efficient approach to resource expansion and to define the drill program, which we submit to the Kimberley Land Council as part of our Heritage Protection Agreement, Program of Works, WA Government, and we expect to be on track to commence drilling in August. And so this will be a major initiative for Tivan at Speewah on the fluorite for the next several years, frankly. There's still over 30 kilometres of greenfield unexplored strikes, things that weren't included in the exploration target. So it's an amazing resource, and we will probably at PFS start to break open for shareholders peer resources. As the complex area, the ASX is all over this. When you do this, it is somewhat challenging for fluorite because a lot of the resources are held by governments and private equity. So it's sometimes difficult to get primary source comparisons. We regard Speewah's fluorite, particularly given that low arsenic aspect to the resource, as certainly top 3 in the world right now. And bear in mind that the world is effectively consuming 1 Speewah a year, like the whole resource, as currently defined, enlarged and defined. So there's just a real disconnect between the supply and the demand. Speewah, there's one greenfield project we think coming on in China in the next 1 to 2 years. And in the West, broadly defined, there's nothing else. This is it. This is the only greenfield project in the West. Now there's other resources in South Africa. I've mentioned Nokeng on Twitter. It's an impressive resource. It's, I think, probably the best run resource in the West. They've got another resource that I expect they will move to at the appropriate point in time. But Speewah is right up there, absolutely. The upside potential on resource extension is real. The mineralogy is exciting. We're close to port. It's on the surface. We've got government facilitation and many other aspects. So broadly conceived, as I've said several times now, shareholders need to understand that this is an absolute world-class resource in a highly, highly critical industry. Now we have the resource expansion, and what that means here, I am talking longer on this slide than I thought, is that when we get to the PFS next month, that can only be based upon the JORC. So please understand that. It's a really important point to make. The scoping study had an 8-year mine life. With the addition to the resource that we made in April, which was significant, I said it would be. We went from 6.7 million high-grade tons to 8.6, I believe it is. That's a significant extension. Now, in the pit design and all the work we're doing with SRK and LICO, we'll probably end up with a PFS starting point life of mine of 10 years. So moving it from, say, 8 years to 10 years based upon that resource extension that we got in the data room with a comparable basis of design. Again, I don't want to say too much about PFS today. It's not appropriate. But the point here is that we've got a multi-year path to resource extension, which will extend that life of mine really, really significantly. Okay, so even when we get to this first cut of the PFS, understand that there's ongoing works and that will directly lead to ongoing life of mine extension. And there will probably be another contribution to life of mine extension, which is that these resources are depleting so fast around the world that anything it is high grade, as we are, ends up with mid-grade tailings, for example. And those mid-grade tailings will become high grade by the time we work through the high grade stuff at Speewah. There's just a tremendous sort of gradient of resource depletion. And again, you can see China's conduct. And so we believe that this will be, a significant life of mine, and that the project fundamentals that we'll introduce to shareholders in a month or so's time, it's just really the start. It's just the start of the journey. Okay, and here we're showing this image for the first time. I want to emphasize here this as sort of proof of work. And for those that understand mine plans that have been involved in the industry longer than I have, obviously, you'll know that you can't present a 3D model unless you've worked through a process flow sheet and you've bedded that down, and unless you've worked through all of the mechanical, electrical, and civil engineering. And that's what we've done here. And that milestone was achieved a couple of weeks ago, and a great credit to LICO. The team's been amazing to work with. We're really appreciative. And then we can feed in the results into Navisworks, which is a great piece of software, and start to visualize this. And this is, this is proof that that's how deep and advanced we are already. And again, an incredible amount of work from really high productive team. And you can soak this in. I think the stakeholders especially appreciate this sort of imagery. And so this is, again, just the start of the journey in the Speewah Valley. And an image we'll probably come back to in years to come. Briefly on the hydro, I just wanted to emphasize that this is like a stage 2 development. We can start the mine on a minimum viable basis by bringing the road in, and by utilizing power sources, traditional power sources such as diesel, gas, whilst this broader vision of the East Kimberley is taking place. What I want to emphasize here is this has created a huge amount of excitement in the East Kimberley. And now that Sumitomo's obviously stepped in as well, there's a real buzz up there that this could be the one, and we think it will be. And again, the key points to emphasize here are that for the longest time, the hydro was being used by Argyle Diamond Mine to the south. That's the purple transmission corridor, decommissioned over the past couple of years. So you've got 10 to 15 megawatts of hydro capacity idling, and you've got an existing transmission corridor. And of course, you always want to reuse existing transmission. And so we've got this unique opportunity. It fits us like a glove. We didn't move on this as assertively as we have in the recent months last year, because the vanadium project was practically too big for the idle capacity. Right, the fluorite project is hand in glove. It is perfect. And what we've been doing really behind the scenes for a long period of time is reading in particularly the key traditional owner groups around the Kimberley, and there's 5 or 6 of them. And we need to get everyone to build that consensus and to ensure that there are really profound community-wide benefits. And we're doing fantastically. It's one of the great pleasures of this role, being out on country, whether it was Alice this week, Kimberley a couple of weeks ago. We did a long trip through on country. We saw 5 or 6 of the TO groups. We'd obviously briefed them before we made this public. And they're not just warming to it. I think they can see that it's real, and it's really, really exciting to have that. Those communities are stuck on diesel and paying exorbitant power prices. And there's sort of almost a spiritual connection to the idea of using water to generate electricity for traditional owners up there. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and I hope it will take shape. It won't slow us down. Like, we're not waiting for the hydro to build the project, but it is absolutely part of our mission. And in Japan as well. Japan is very focused on carbon content of projects, shall I say, whether it's gas, energy, critical minerals mining projects. They talk of life cycle analysis of the downstream products. And that's an important concept for us to start to get used to. And so the possibility of us bringing together, a truly green critical minerals project and projects is remarkable, and it's tailor-made. So there'll be a lot of work on this. It's parallel work stream. We are being ably supported by Horizon Power on a feasibility study, which will be integrated into our PFS, just to start to work through the options and who can contribute, particularly to the transmission corridor. And we've got the full support of Pac Hydro that owns the generation and in fact owns the existing transmission. So this is an incredible opportunity for Tivan, for the fluorite project, for the region. I really want to emphasize the region here because it's an opportunity to bring in not just different traditional owner communities into hydro electricity, but you can imagine as well potential for road building, including North Sequestro, closing a loop, ecotourism in the East Kimberley, which is not governed by the wet season. These are iconic destinations. And so there is a broader initiative afoot, shall I say, Western Australian government, federal government, and Tivan is the anchor for this. So really exciting times up there. We have to be open, transparent. We have to be engaged, fully engaged, and we very much are. And so, Sumitomo. Now, where to start this? I would say a year ago. In taking over at Tivan, I knew that there were broader geostrategic tectonic plates shifting. And I could see that the successful projects in Australia in this sector over the past decade at that time had largely been financed by China in exchange for offtake. And so that was the genesis of the lithium industry. For example, China would bring in early stage capital and that product would be sold to China. And I knew for sure that that was not a sustainable model and that there were moves afoot in government, and our board is involved. Without naming names, you can imagine the access we have to policymakers, think tanks, and the knowledge that we would have, the long run knowledge. Now, all of this ratcheting tighter of capital account restrictions now for inbound Chinese capital, we believe is a trend. Now, we're not passing judgment on this. We don't have a normative position, shall I say, on the merits of this policy, but it's bipartisan. It's obviously sponsored by the US and now called Trusted Partners, and it's durable. It's a secular thematic. So that means when you have rocks in the ground and you have a superannuation sector that's not really early stage and really focused on offshore investment and even domestically pretty committed to their benchmarks, if I can say, that there's really no access to capital for early stage projects. And this was a really important, I guess, insight that we brought. And what it meant for us was that we had to go to Japan. And as shareholders will know, I've been up there 3-4 times over the past year, basically introducing Tivan. And a large part of that work was on vanadium, of course, but building our access to the key government agencies as well as to the major trading houses. And so those relationships take time. One of the risks, I guess, in our strategy of focusing so much on Japan is that decisions would take too long. Now, as it's turned out, when we moved from vanadium to fluorite, we were able to go back and building on those relationships, introduce the fluorite project, and the reaction function was dramatic, shall I say. We knew as well that there'd been trade consternation between Japan and Korea on fluorinated products between 2018 and 19. And so I introduced this to, say, 3 of the major trading houses, and all 3 were interested from the start. And ultimately, it was my decision to move to an exclusive posture with Sumitomo Corporation. That was in about April, and really get into the weeds on the diligence of the project and sharing what we knew and providing them with this opportunity to come public with us. It's certainly a landmark. I don't see how it could be interpreted otherwise. I'm not aware of, I don't think there's there's no precedent. Let me say this categorically. There's no precedent for a big five Japanese trading house to engage in a critical minerals project in Australia before PFS. Sumitomo Corporation has a mineral resources division with some coal assets, copper gold projects. So this is their first foray into the critical minerals sector. The alliance refers to JOGMEC, and of course we can only have put that in the ASX announcement with the support of Sumitomo Corporation. And we have a pathway ahead now, 6-7 months, to work through towards a binding JV. And the binding JV would be an incredible achievement for this company. And certainly if it involved JOGMEC, and I'm not commenting further on that today, it would put Tivan in really a category of one. The only company that's achieved that in Australia is Lynas and Mount Weld and Sojitz. So this is the heady company that we're now in, and it's unambiguous. This is exactly where we stand. And I've included one extra bullet point there, which is to confirm that Japan, broadly defined, is bringing a delegation to Australia. I won't say the month, it's obviously sensitive, but high-level delegation, including a visit to Speewah site as part of ongoing diligence. And where I think this will ultimately head, which is a project which is strongly facilitated in terms of access to capital by different Australian government agencies, as well as different Japanese government agencies, supporting a JV. And what I want to emphasize here is that, because I know there's been comments about, wow, that might mean Sumitomo comes for the vanadium down the track. And I think, the speculation that's online around that is, some of it's certainly justified. But what I want to say here is that we know we've got this incredible vanadium resource. We know obviously it's adjacent to the fluorite. We know we've got potentially 2 development pathways to that resource. But it's not really about that. It's largely in Tivan's hands now as to whether that long run aspiration comes off. Because if we deliver this project, on the schedule that I've mentioned, and it's as profitable as I expect it will be, and we build that incredible trust over the next couple of years with Sumitomo Corporation and these government agencies in Japan, Tivan will be in such a rarefied company. And the trust that will be built will lead to other great things as well. So the ball's back in our court. If we execute as we have been, and we deliver this with our fantastic partners in Japan, it will be a relationship that will endure, I believe, for decades, and potentially even further. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about it, and one of the reasons I really prioritized Sumitomo Corporation, was that this is a company that I've admired for a long time, because it has these foundational principles about enterprising spirit and integrity. These should sound familiar to people that have seen the genesis of Tivan. And this means there's enormous trust. And of course, they've put enormous trust in us going public this early. And we're super grateful. We're excited. I'm going back to Tokyo next week. I can't wait. I love that town. And Japan is just a country I admire so much. So we're thrilled to have delivered this first step for shareholders. It's still dramatically underappreciated for what this means for the company, and a fantastic journey ahead through the second half. And we're confident, we're extremely confident it will lead to the desired goal of both parties. So Q&A. I am a little bit over time, so I'm going to pull through these questions. We received a lot. I want to say that when we get questions, just let me emphasize again, we often get questions about share price. How high is it going to go? Day-to-day questions as well. Tivan's policy, no comment. And so people calling in as well, very excited about the breakout. We're not going to comment on the share price. So just let me be clear about that. So most of the other questions we've received, there's a few missing, but we've broadly captured what hit the inbox last couple of days. And we want to have that accountability as well. Questions get asked, good questions. We want to be available to answer them, X things around day-to-day share price movements. So let me just pull through in the interest of time and try to answer the thrust of the question. It's visible here, you should be able to see it, and emphasize some points. So on Sandover, briefly, yes, the lead silver is the real focus of our efforts, along with that relationship building that I mentioned at the top with key traditional owner groups and especially Central Land Council in and around Alice. I think it is the best silver play, Tivan, in the ASX because it is a free option. The way I think about the company now is you've got sort of sum of parts. We knew the company was valuing, sorry, the market, once we'd trued up all of the misrepresentations from the TNG era, we knew late last year that the market was valuing our vanadium asset and technology pathways and management, I think, somewhere around $100 million. And markets go up and down in general. But now we've brought the fluorite project on. We know we have a very good sense of what it's worth. What it's worth ultimately will depend upon how high the fluorite price goes. But certainly Tivan's now got a fantastic pathway to project delivery on the fluorite. So that's definitely, I'd say, the dominant part of Tivan's current sort of intrinsic value. And then the silver and lead, we do know a lot more than the market. We can't say. And again, Roman's been out in the field a lot with his team. We do have other samples coming in relatively soon. And of course, we need to drill to start this journey. But we know that it's a vast zone of mineralization, and we can see the surface hydrothermic activity, and it's just sort of incredible. So if you want a standalone silver play, good luck to you. But if you want a free option, and in terms of risk reward, then this company is something to seriously consider. In terms of the vanadium questions, we are still working on the electrolyte test work. It's very important that we prove that we can reach Sumitomo Electric Industries specs. So there's no confusion. SEI is a separate company than Sumitomo Corporation. They're both part of the Sumitomo Group. SEI is in Osaka, and we got to know them well last year, and we're working on this. There will be results soon that we can share, and I can say that we're firmly on track. The vanadium recovery, especially from Speewah, is just incredible. And so this feeds into the viability of the resource meeting that spec. And we're absolutely on track. We want to achieve that to prove that we've got, basically the best vanadium resource on the planet, and that it's amenable to that long run use case, which sort of comes back to the second question here. In terms of the skepticism around VRFB, I understand that. I'm aware of where the vanadium price is, and it's one of the reasons that I made that decision months ago now to focus on the fluorite and to pull the PFS so we can focus our resources on the highest value add and the most direct pathways to first revenue and to free cash flow as well. And so I think the defense of VRFB is that it is clearly the most robust technology. It's a technology that we understand very well. The inventor of vanadium redox flow batteries is on our technical advisory committee. But the strongest data point for the skeptics is China. China is adding incredible amount of VRFB capacity each week, each month. And so they're embracing that technology because they believe it's the most robust and the superior technology to move towards long duration energy storage. And the West just isn't there for different reasons, running through regulation to accessibility of vanadium resources and so on and so forth. But the journey towards net zero, people have different views on that. We believe that if we can bring our incredible resource to market, bring that electrolyte to middle arm, we will be able to provoke the demand and start to assist the companies that need to move in the direction of lower carbon emissions, start to achieve those goals. And so that's all out there in the future. I'll leave that question there. In terms of the schedule, Torben in Germany, nice to see you. Thanks for your kind words, Torben, as always. I think I've addressed this, so I'll move on. In terms of the declaring fluorite as a critical mineral, just two things to say. One is that we knew as soon as that happened that an opportunity would be there for us potentially to move in this direction. We weren't sure. We had to work basically through Christmas and January to ensure that there were no visible fatal flaws in what we bought at Speewah. And that was our diligence through the month of January. But we knew once it was on the list that it's just a different level of government facilitation. And it's not just that we knew that in terms of access to critical minerals facility and international partnership grants and so on and so forth. It's recognized by other parties. Japan could see that it was on the list. So when we brought this to Japan, that it was on the list obviously gave Sumitomo Corporation much greater confidence in engaging early. So plus the price, I showed earlier, you'll see that the price has moved up so much. And the final thing is just to say that it wouldn't have been possible to move without that, I don't believe, because part of the journey with Tivan has been to keep investor confidence. And that's a non-trivial thing to do when you're in a period where the critical mineral sector has basically wiped out. We're in a post-bubble phase at the moment, and access to capital remains challenging for most companies. So if we'd gone forward and started to talk about fluorite when it wasn't on the list, I don't know if we would have been able to do that successfully. And so part of Tivan's journey is that storytelling. And one of the things that's part of my role and why I'm on Twitter. And so, bringing investors along has been much easier because it's on the list. And now people are getting excited. We're starting to feel that turn, and they damn well should be excited. In terms of the timeframes, we've been very clear today about resource estimates, timeframes, hurdles. There are always hurdles. My focus is making sure, not that the 500 or 600, the incredible complexity on our Gantt chart is managed by me, micro-managed by me. I'm focused on the big items, the things that could cause significant delays. And so a lot of my time is on the LUS, and that's a very important area, which I think, are breaking new ground in. And it's such a privilege to be in the position we are in the Kimberley. And so that's a vitally important area. And of course, project finance and the path ahead is key. And we may get some slippage, and we may get some time improvements as well on all of that engineering. But I think if we avoid large gaps where thereabouts, and the productivity that the team is displaying, the team broadly conceived across our contract as well, who are all buying in. They've all got their best people on this. We're just seeing this hyper productivity. So so basically we're on track. In terms of other funding opportunities, the Critical Minerals Grant, I can confirm that the International Partnerships Critical Minerals Grant is tailor-made for Tivan Sumitomo proposed joint venture. How could you have a project and a partnership more perfectly conceived and more eligible for that program than us? And so we will apply at the appropriate time, and there'll be other major validations of the project from government that will be visible soon. So there'll be a lot of news. People are sort of saying, let me jump forward. What other achievements do you hope to tick off? Well, you can see the broad time frame, but of course, I've always got a few rabbits in the hat, shall I say. And so we provide an enormous amount of transparency every day. But there's just going to be this torrent of ongoing news from us. And that's part of how we communicate. And again, it's part of this productivity of the team. This random question about change in political leadership, it wouldn't matter to Tivan. We operate across the aisle. Northern Territory's got a big election coming up. I'm in close contact with the Chief Minister, fully briefed the Leader of the Opposition. So we're agnostic. We're running a business here. All I would say on that is that, we've built a relationship with Madeleine King. She's important because she's the Minister for Resources. She's also the Minister for Northern Australia. I'm happy to be appearing on a panel at CEDA at the end of the month with Minister King and the CEO of Fortescue. This is the sort of company that Tivan keeps these days. And the views that we have on the development of the critical mineral sector are sought after sought after. So it's a real privilege to be appearing on that panel. So that's an important relationship. And anytime you're building relationships with key ministers and people in government, it can, it takes time. And if there's a change of government, that can affect that. But at the policy level, it really would matter very much. And so on Twitter, competitive tension, I think I've sort of alluded to the fact that there were multiple opportunities for Tivan in Japan on this project, and I think in Korea as well. But I made that decision early. I would say early, but to really focus on one partner. Again, the project's not that big, and JVs, it's very important. We don't just have a JV, we're going to have a successful JV. And JVs can be hard to manage if you've got multiple parties. So it was always going to be the case that I was going to prioritize one. And Sumitomo moved with such decisiveness that it became quite inevitable. And in terms of offtake, part of Sumitomo's diligence was to present the project across an incredible network that they have. And again, without saying too much here, that the visibility they have on the demand function across multiple countries is incredible. And it means that we're in great shape on selling the product that we produce. And in fact, I've come to think now in this mining game that that's actually, you may need to invert the model, like the sort of status quo in mining is we go and find something and we try and sell it. And Tivan's operating quite differently. Yeah, I think we're trying to sell it even before we've defined it or designed it. And I think that's actually a better model, even with the lead and the silver. And I love silver. I used to trade silver in my hedge fund. It's such a fantastic commodity. And it's got really important use cases in the energy transition. I'm already in discussions in Korea with some really serious people in Korea on the lead and the silver. And it's important, because if you can build that trust early and you can find these early partnerships, that's how you raise the capital. And so Roman will have to find me some other things. I'm giving him a shopping list and we'll sort of invert the model a little bit. But without being too cute about it, it's tremendously important to have those relationships with your customers. And we know that the fluorspar we have is unique and remarkable and in really, really strong demand. So let me finish off with this last question about the team. I'm going to stop sharing here and wrap things up because I know we're approaching the hour. This last question, I did put that one last because I think it's very interesting. There's two parts to it, which is the HR sort of setup and are we hiring? The short answer is yes. We haven't hired anyone for about a year now. And I'd say in the next quarter, we'll be adding capacity in the team. And this will be an ongoing process for Tivan as it starts this next phase of the company's development. We always look for people with great skills and great talent, and then this cultural fit, sort of value alignment. And then we need the roles. And in the roles, yeah, I mean, Jason, our CFO, certainly needs someone reporting to him, and Steve on geology. And just to give you a little anecdote there, Steve, I think, did put a job ad out as for a 2IC geologist, given all of the work we've got ahead. And I think it got overrun, like it was like 30, 35 CVs, just showing the brand, I guess, that we've built already, and that concept of Tivan being an employer of choice. And that's fantastic. And I'll probably have at least one more person reporting to me in the relatively near future. So yes, HR will start to move as we move into the next phase of developing the company. And then in terms of this sort of reference to how we're getting all this work done, this is really central to Tivan, and I think why we're so different. I really believe that. And perhaps it's informed by me coming from a different industry and coming through, the campaign in the way that I did. But the team broadly defined is incredible. So here I'm talking about a technical advisory group. And again, I can confirm, particularly Stefan and Simon have been really intimately involved in the past couple of months as we're getting through these early engineering phases and project design phases, and having that experience accessible to us is fantastic. And then our board's been really highly engaged, particularly, as we get into these really important developments in Japan, and through difficult periods as well that we've had. The transition at this company has not been easy to achieve. So you need that highly engaged board. But tonight, I actually just want to close by acknowledging the team, like the work that, say, Jason Gilte, CFO, Katrina Artsun as VP of Engagement, and then Michael Christ, our project manager, Brendan Nicol, our process manager, and Steve Walsh, our head of Geo. Those five, what they've done, I wish shareholders could see it. And maybe one day they will. Maybe I'll be able to unpack the incredible work that the team's got through. And there are others as well, Alex and everyone involved. But I wanted to single those five out at the close tonight, because it's been such a privilege to see this team take shape across these disciplines, people that didn't know each other, and then to find this zone where everything just clicks and they're keying off each other, and you can see personal growth in all of them, operating across disciplines seamlessly, solving hard problems as we go. It's an incredible, hyper-productive team. I think we're like 10 times, like an order of magnitude more productive than any other company in the sector right now. I say that because we're spending about a third of any other company that I can see in our sort of market cap zone, a quarter. Like, I can see that. And I think we're achieving at least 3 times as much based on news flow, milestones, developments. 3 times 3 is 9. So you had that order of magnitude shock at Tivan in terms of the hyper productivity of the team, which is what a disruptive company should look like. That's sort of the Elon view, the order of magnitude. And I think we're there. I think we're there. And I think I want to close with that point. If you look at just these last 3 months, 22 March, last investor call to now, and look at what's changed, and extrapolate that forward with more people that will be hiring across all of these fantastic initiatives. It's just a really, really exciting time to be at the company, involved in it as an employee, a board member, an advisory group member, one of our contractors, our soon-to-be JV partner. This is a really, really exciting time to be at the company. And in my position as well, I think I closed last time by that ironclad commitment that I was going to do whatever it takes to get the company to first revenue. And I think sitting here tonight, I think I can double down on that, which is to say that my commitment now is to get the company to first free cash flow. And that's different. That's a higher hurdle. But that's how confident I am on where we are now. And shareholders have that ongoing commitment from me. And so I'll leave it here. I know I've pushed the hour to the limit. I'm meticulous on timing on these sorts of things. I hope that's given everyone that insight into the rapidly shifting dynamics at the company. I hope most of all, it's given you that surge of confidence that we all feel here. I presented the Sumitomo Alliance as the start of the second chapter, as it were, of Tivan, and we all feel that here. The engagement this week and the enthusiasm across the board, the shock, I would say, as well, at the speed. It was seismic, and it underpins the confidence that we have on the pathway that we have, but also it comes back to the resource and how special it is, and it will lead to a PFS soon, just a month away. And behind the PFS, I may pop back up online if there's interest for me to do so, because we just want to bring that back always to the shareholders and to the stakeholders of Tivan. So that's it. That's a wrap. I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I hope that's filled you in on the incredible progress at Tivan over the past couple of months. Thank you.